soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force. You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
Hello everyone, welcome to the video. In honor of the 77th anniversary, we're going to do 5 things you probably didn't know about D-Day. On the morning of June 6, 1944, troops from the United States, England, and Canada landed on the beaches of Normandy. An invasion force of approximately 7,000 ships unloaded 156,000 troops onto the beaches in northern France to open up a second front in the war. D-Day was the culmination of Allied troops being bogged down in the Italy invasion and requests from Stalin to open up a second front in the West dating as far back as 1942. Germany had expected an Allied invasion in Northern Europe for quite some time, which is why the Atlantic Wall was constructed. The Atlantic Wall was a series of coastal defenses stretching from Norway to the southwestern tip of France to the border with Spain. What the Germans didn't know is where the Allies would actually invade. The two most favored locations were the beaches of Normandy and the Pas du Calais. Now, for a long time, Pas du Calais was the favored location for the Allies as well. It was the shortest sea crossing and a very key strategic position. But the Allies figured the Germans would see it that way too, so it was ultimately decided that Normandy would be the invasion site. But the Allies had a vested interest in making sure that the Germans thought the invasion would be taking place at Calais. And in one of the greatest acts of deception in history, the Allies created a fake army stationed at Kent right across from Pas du Calais. The fake invasion force was made complete by fake transport ships, fake airplanes, and inflatable tanks. They also had backup units stationed there to look like there was an invasion force actually amassing. As if this weren't enough, there were constant fake radio transmissions being sent, directing troop movements and instructions to various outfits in the invasion force. And on top of that, German double agents in England sent fake reports back to Germany telling them that they were going to be invading at Pas du Calais. And the cherry on top of all this is that the invasion force was being led by none other than General George Patton. It was reasoned that if they put Patton in command of the area, the Germans would reasonably assume that he would be leading the invasion force. The Allies had tried an amphibious invasion of Northern Europe before at Dieppe. On August 19, 1942, the Allies executed Operation Jubilee, which was an amphibious invasion at a German port in Dieppe, France. The Allied invasion force consisted of 6,050 infantry, which were predominantly Canadian troops. They were supported by a regiment of tanks and protection from the Royal Air Force above. Unfortunately, the invasion was a disaster. Of the just over 6,000 men who came ashore, 3,623 were killed, wounded, or became prisoners of war. Although it was a defeat, many of the lessons learned at Dieppe became instrumental in the success of the D-Day invasion. Many of the German soldiers defending the coast at Normandy were not regular Wehrmacht. They were in fact members of the Ostbataillon, or the Eastern Battalion. Many of these troops were actually POWs captured in Eastern Europe. One of the most interesting stories here is a man by the name of Yang Kyung-jong. Now, I want to preface this by saying there is some doubt in the validity of this story, but allegedly, Yang was forced conscripted into the Japanese army, was then captured by the Soviet Union, forced conscripted into the Red Army, and then was subsequently captured by the Germans and conscripted into the German army. Eventually, Yang was stationed at Normandy and, after the D-Day invasion, was captured by the Allies. Initially, Allied troops thought he was a Japanese soldier in German uniform, but eventually he was able to tell his story and ended up becoming a U.S. citizen. He lived in Illinois until his death in 1992. Yang's story is actually the basis of one of my favorite movies ever made, My Way. I would also be remiss if I didn't talk about a very brief, easy to miss, but insanely cool scene in Saving Private Ryan.
I'm waiting here to tie in my flanks. Over. What? What? I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
Since there are no subtitles, we don't actually know what they're saying. But what's really interesting is these two guys are not speaking German. They're speaking Czech. These men were probably forced conscripted into the Wehrmacht after Germany annexed Czechoslovakia. Now, there's a channel on YouTube called History Buffs, and the creator, Nick Hodges, does a fantastic review of Saving Private Ryan, and he breaks this down a lot more than I did here, so I highly recommend you check it out. There's a link in the description for it. Now, this last one is a really, really cool fact that I just learned recently. Theodore Roosevelt's son was at Normandy. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt III had made several verbal requests to be the division's commanding general on D-Day, but he was denied. After submitting a written petition, he was begrudgingly approved. On the day of the invasion, Roosevelt was 56 years old and had a heart condition that required him to walk with the use of a cane. However, he was part of the first wave that successfully captured Utah Beach. Even more astounding, Theodore Roosevelt III's son, Captain Quentin Roosevelt II, was also at D-Day, and he was among the first wave of soldiers at Omaha Beach. Well, there you have it, 5 things you probably didn't know about D-Day. I do just want to take a second, though, and just say I'm fortunate enough to have been able to visit Normandy, and it's one of the few places I've ever stood where the best way I can describe it is that you know that you feel the gravity of what happened there when you're standing on that beachhead and you look down and you see how steep those cliffs are. I stood on the cliffs at Omaha Beach, and to say that it took my breath away is an understatement. And then visiting the cemetery and just seeing when you made your way into there a little bit, pretty much as far as you can see, there are headstones, and it's a very somber but still an experience that I highly recommend. If you have a chance to go, you should definitely visit. Well, that'll wrap it up. Thank you again for watching, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out some of the other content on the channel.